Welcome to Double Helix, Blueprint of Nations, Episode 3.2, Emperor of the World, Napoleon's Reign and Ruin. Napoleon's wars were his own wars, made inevitable by his measureless greed for power. Wars which never served the interest of France. Wars for which the deceived and all too patient nation paid with the blood of his sons, and in the end, with the territorial gains won by the Republic. Peter Giles on Napoleon. Welcome back to Double Helix. Last time, we delved into the extraordinary journey of a young Corsican officer from a modest noble family. Throughout the tumultuous French Revolution, he ascended the ranks of the French army. First, playing a crucial role in reclaiming the strategic city of Toulon for the Republic. Later, he became the savior of the Directory by dispersing Parisian mobs with a decisive whiff of grapeshot. His growing reputation earned him command of the Army of Italy, a position initially overlooked in the Republican war effort. In less than a year, he not only expelled Austrian forces from northern Italy, but also decisively concluded the War of the First Coalition, leaving an indelible mark on the map of Europe. Of course, we're talking about none other than Napoleon di Bonaparte, or rather, by this point in the story, the man who had already adopted the stylized French version of his name, Napoleon Bonaparte. As we return to Napoleon, basking in the glow of his triumphs in the Italian campaign, let's ponder the path that lays before him. He was just one amidst a cohort of young, ambitious, and talented Republican officers. Their rise had been propelled by the perpetual state of war since 1789 and the revolutionary forces of meritocracy. But Napoleon's aspirations transcended the ordinary quest for position and glory. From the outset, Napoleon fixated on a grander prize. The years following the Italian campaign marked an inexorable march towards the ultimate power he so profoundly coveted. The aftermath of the Italian campaign emerged as a resounding success, both for France and for the burgeoning influence of Napoleon. His military prowess saw the capture of an astounding 150,000 prisoners, 540 cannons, and 170 standards, marking a triumph shaped by superior artillery technology and Bonaparte's innovative tactics. As Bonaparte's stature soared on the battlefield, his influence permeated French politics. In a strategic move, seeking to control information, realizing even this early on the power that it could yield over the course of discourse, he founded two newspapers, one for his army and another for wider circulation in France. However, he was not immune to criticism. Royalists accused him of looting Italy, sounding warnings of potential dictatorship. History would prove them right on both accounts. Financially, the campaign in Italy was a windfall for Bonaparte. He and his army both benefited tremendously from the Italian campaign. As we said in the previous episode, he exploited Italy. They extracted an estimated $45 million in funds, alongside an additional $12 million in precious metals and jewels. The spoils included more than 300 priceless paintings and sculptures. The rapacious nature of Napoleon's conquest would continue well into the imperial period. The Louvre Museum, world famous for its unparalleled art collections, was a big beneficiary of his conquests. Capitalizing on his momentum, Bonaparte orchestrated a political maneuver by sending General Pierre Augereau to Paris, leading to the coup of 18 Fructidor, or the 4th of September 1797. This move re-established control in favor of Barras and the Republican allies, solidifying their dependence on Bonaparte. The support they gladly took from Bonaparte here would be something they would come to regret later on. Upon Bonaparte's triumphant return to Paris on December 5, 1797, he encountered Charles Maurice de Talleyrand, or Talleyrand in the anglicized version. The new foreign minister, and a key figure in Napoleon's later reign, would play a pivotal role in the months and years to come. Together, they embarked on preparations for the ambitious plan to invade Britain. But eventually, those plans for the invasion of Britain were scuttled in favor of an attack around Egypt, with the goal of threatening critical British connections to India and the Middle East. The Egyptian expedition adds another intriguing chapter to Napoleon's legend. I am going to skip a lot of the detail here, but just know that the focus on scholarly pursuits veils his true intentions, revealing the colossal blunder it ultimately became. Napoleon convinced the Directory to approve the expedition instead of an invasion of England. Napoleon sought to escape Paris and rejuvenate his image, driven by the belief that constant motion was crucial to success. This venture satisfied both sides of Napoleon, the cynical pragmatist and the dreamer adventurer. The Directory, keen to be rid of him, readily agreed, recognizing Napoleon's dangerous character and the importance of keeping him far away from the centers of power. While many myths from the Egyptian expedition persist, one, which I would like to dispel now, is the notion that the Battle of the Pyramids happened by the pyramids. In fact, it did not. It was around 15 miles away. But it is true that in a speech prior to the battle, Napoleon encouraged his beleaguered troops by pointing to the pyramids and saying, "Soldiers, remember that from those monuments yonder, 40 centuries look down upon you." The Egyptian expedition, though yielding invaluable treasures for the Republic's archives and groundbreaking scientific discoveries like the Rosetta Stone for translating ancient Egyptian languages, ultimately unraveled as a failure, exposing Bonaparte's darker side along the way. Some have argued that it was in Egypt that this tyrannical strain of Napoleon's character was unlocked. However, the evidence does show that the duality to Napoleon's character was always there, always seething under the surface, always waiting for opportunity. It was Napoleon who said, after all, that ability is nothing without opportunity. The expedition did reveal a before and after in the course of Bonaparte's life. It marked a turning point, revealing Napoleon's unscrupulous tendencies that would begin to present more and more often. A haunting episode during the siege of Jaffa in present-day Israel and Palestine exemplifies this shift. Upon discovering that some defenders were paroled prisoners of war from a previous French and Ottoman encounter, Napoleon ordered the execution of the garrison and all of the former prisoners by bayonet or drowning. The ensuing 3 days witnessed a terrible slaughter, where men, women, and children fell victim to robbery, pillaging, and indiscriminate killing, with some accounts retelling of French soldiers wading into the surf to finish off drowning men, women, and children. This event, and others, began contributing to Napoleon's growing reputation as a ruthless tyrant in certain circles. Later, as his battered army, afflicted by the bubonic plague, returned to Egypt, rumors circulated that Napoleon ordered the sickest to be poisoned with opium to expedite the march back. Ambition, regardless of the cost, started to become a hallmark for the still very young general. By August 1799, Napoleon left Egypt, essentially abandoning his troops, concerned with events in the European continent. Upon Napoleon's return to France, escaping the British naval blockade that had confined him to Egypt, he encountered a feeble Directory, struggling with financial woes and widespread unpopularity. In stark contrast, Napoleon had become a hero, adored by both the Republican press and the general public. The 18th of Brumaire, in the Republican calendar, or November 9th, 1799, marked a pivotal moment when Napoleon, alongside his brother Lucien and council members, orchestrated a coup to overthrow the Directory. The execution of the coup was chaotic. Initially intended as a legislative move to disband the Directory, it shifted to a more forceful approach with troops leading the takeover. Napoleon employed a tactic that would resonate in future political discourse worldwide. He discovered that the best way to deceive is to tell the truth, but not the whole truth. A lesson learned from his earlier struggles to become a Corsican hero, the chaos in Paris during the Revolution's early days, the Toulon massacre, and his participation in Vendémiaire. Ruthless execution and pragmatism became hallmarks, essential to avoiding victimhood. The aftermath saw the establishment of the consulship, with Napoleon as first consul and 2 other consuls holding minor roles, solidifying his undisputed rule over France. Historians have labeled this period as dictatorship by plebiscite. While Napoleon outwardly maintained democratic appearances by consulting voters through frequent votes, the reality was that decisions were often predetermined, consolidating his grip on power. In a slow and steady regression, France found itself succumbing to a familiar pattern of authoritarianism, reminiscent of its historical tendencies. Despite the revolutionary gains in freedoms and democratic ideals, the nation had completed a full circle. Napoleon, once dismissive of those hoping for a different leadership style, quipped about being molded into another Washington, an idea his ego rejected outright. The unfortunate legacy of strongman politics persisted, echoing the steps of predecessors that he admired, like Caesar or Augustus Caesar, but with a distinctive twist. Napoleon's lesson to aspiring autocrats was profound. Cloaking authoritarianism in the guise of democracy wielded even greater influence. The subversion of democratic norms and institutions to consolidate power, often with the unwitting consent of voters, became a favorite tactic for 20th century dictators and autocrats, a tradition that endures to this very day. For France, the subsequent approval of the new constitution, known as the Constitution of Year 8, marked, at least in my interpretation, the official conclusion of the 1789 revolution. In the years following Napoleon's initial triumphs in northern Italy, the Austrians and Russians regained momentum, pushing the majority of the French army back towards the French border. Upon assuming the role of First Consul, Napoleon embarked on a mission to reverse French fortunes on the battlefield. Crossing the Alps into northern Italy, he caught the Austrians off guard and secured a decisive victory at the Battle of Marengo on June 14, 1800. Amidst the battle, facing a precarious situation, Napoleon rode out amongst the troops, rallying them to stand and fight. This impassioned plea proved crucial, sustaining the French forces until reinforcements arrived. The subsequent truce allowed the French to reclaim control of northern Italy once again, marking Napoleon's inaugural major triumph as head of state. While in his earlier campaign, he had improved French performance against the Austrians in northern Italy within a year, now he achieved a similar feat in just a month, thanks in part to his audacious strategy of invading through the Alps, opting for the unexpected. Marengo proved to be another significant milestone in Napoleon's career. In truth, his risky plans had almost assured the destruction of his forces, but between luck and the timely arrival of reinforcements under General Desai, one of Napoleon's closest collaborators and who was unfortunately killed in the battle, the day was saved. Militarily, Marengo was an important victory, but politically, it allowed Napoleon the credit he needed to eventually declare himself consul for life and later Emperor of France. Within months of Marengo, the Austrians had capitulated once more. The Treaty of Luneville, and later the Treaty of Amiens, between France and Britain in 1802, settled the War of the Second Coalition, providing Europe with its most substantial respite from war during the Napoleonic period. In the same year, through another plebiscite, Napoleon, with popular support, declared himself consul for life, essentially becoming a dictator for life. In May 1802, after a temporary and uneasy peace with Britain, Napoleon made a regrettable decision by reinstating slavery across several French colonies. Slavery had been abolished during the height of the Revolution by the law of 1794. This law, along with a decree in 1793 within the island of Saint-Domingue, now Haiti, had sparked the Haitian Revolution. By 1802, the island had achieved a high degree of self-governance under Toussaint Louverture, a former slave turned liberator. Louverture provoked the anger of Napoleon by essentially declaring Saint-Domingue's independence. Napoleon's coldly calculated decision to reinstate slavery and to regain control of the highly profitable former colonial holding of Saint-Domingue showcased his pragmatic approach, expedience, and ruthless ambition. Acknowledging the necessity of generating additional income to fund his European wars, Napoleon appointed his brother-in-law, Charles Leclerc, to lead an expeditionary force aimed at re-establishing French control over Saint-Domingue. The ensuing conflict witnessed a brutal fighting on both sides, ultimately resulting in the defeat of the French forces due to a combination of yellow fever and resilient Haitian resistance. The ill-fated expedition resulted in staggering losses for France, surpassing even the toll of the later Battle of Waterloo. Out of the 31,000 soldiers sent to Saint-Domingue, only around 7,000 to 8,000 survived, and more than 20 French generals lost their lives. On January 1, 1804, Dessalines declared the colony of Saint-Domingue as a second independent state in the Americas, and named it Haiti. Initially appointed Governor-General for life, he later crowned himself Emperor Jacques I on October 6, 1804. The 1804 Haiti Massacre saw the brutal massacre of the last remaining French colonists in Haiti. Dessalines implemented a system known as capitalisme agraire, akin to serfdom, not explicitly slavery, but designed to sustain profits in the sugar industry through force. French attitudes towards Haitian independence, marked by the first and only successful slave revolt in the Western Hemisphere, left a lasting impact on relations. Following Napoleon's defeat and the restoration of the French monarchy, the French government insisted on an exorbitant indemnity from Haiti in exchange for international recognition, aiming to compensate itself for the lost sugar profits from its former colony. This immense debt burden persisted well into the 20th century, contributing to Haiti's enduring economic struggles and establishing a legacy that continues to affect the country to this day. Back in the European continent, following the Peace of Amiens, Napoleon, firmly at the helm of France, embarked on an ambitious series of reform programs designed to reshape the nation. These initiatives targeted key facets of French society, including law, public policy, education, and finance. The most enduring outcome of the consulate years was the creation of the Code Napoleon, a comprehensive legal code. Commencing in 1800 over 4 years, Napoleon actively participated in the revision of the Civil Code. Contrary to a ceremonial role, he attended 57 out of the 109 meetings, some extended until 4 in the morning. This deep engagement showcased Napoleon's exceptional versatility, spanning military strategy, diplomacy, and now the intricacies of law. Initiated in 1802 and officially published in 1804, the Code Napoleon underwent subsequent editions until 1810, covering commercial, criminal, and penal law. While the code has influenced contemporary legal systems, underlying Napoleon's intent was not only to establish modern property rights, but also to eradicate remnants of the ancien regime and feudal privileges. The code served as a tool for consolidating Napoleon's personal authority within French society, creating a structure where citizens were beholden to him directly. Another enduring reform was the foundation in December 1799 of the Council of State, an advisory body of experts which could also draft laws for submission to the legislative body. Napoleon drew many of his ministers and ambassadors from this council. It was the council which undertook the codification of French law. In addition to legal reforms, Napoleon's influence extended to the standardization of measurements. After officially introducing the metric system in France in 1801, he spread it throughout Western Europe with his armies. While unpopular in some circles, in 1812 Napoleon introduced a compromise system in the retail and trade called the traditional units of measurement. In December 1805, Napoleon also abolished the revolutionary calendar, with his 10-day week introduced in 1793. Moreover, his educational reforms laid the foundation for the French educational system and influenced much of Western Europe. During the consulate, Napoleon orchestrated a regal ambience in preparation for the impending imperial era. Balls, court dresses, grand parades, and the reintroduction of monarchy-associated elements aimed to familiarize French society with monarchical trappings. His birthday, August 15th, became a national holiday, and coins featuring his likeness were circulated. Napoleon's sword hilt even sparkled with diamonds from Louis XVI. By late 1804, the stage was set, and following another plebiscite, Napoleon garnered overwhelming support from the French electorate to proclaim himself Emperor of France. His coronation on December 2, 1804, marked the culmination of his ascent to power. During the ceremony, he symbolically picked up a replica of Charlemagne's crown and placed it atop his head, underscoring the self-made nature of his rule. Contrary to a myth, he did not snatch the crown from the Pope's hand. The move was prearranged and anticipated by those in attendance. Napoleon reached the pinnacle of his power at around a year later, on December 5, 1805, at the Battle of Austerlitz. The Peace of Amiens, established in 1803, proved more of a truce than a lasting peace, as Britain shattered it, leading to the formation of the Third Coalition against France by September 1805. Responding swiftly, Napoleon assembled his Grande Armée, initially comprising 200,000 troops and later swelling to over 350,000 troops. Within months, French forces marched into Vienna in November 1805. The decisive confrontation occurred in December, as the Russian and Austrian armies faced Napoleon's forces in the heights outside of Austerlitz. The clash at Austerlitz, also known as the Battle of the Three Emperors, drew over 150,000 men into its dramatic folds, earning its place among the iconic battles of history like Cannae, Gaugamela, and Waterloo. Napoleon, a master tactician, employed a deceptive strategy, feigning weakness and purposefully weakening his right flank while enticing the Austrians and Russians to commit fully. In a brilliant twist, Napoleon orchestrated a trap that led to the complete envelopment of the Allied armies. In one famous episode during the retreat, as Russian forces, defeated by the French right, attempted to withdraw across the frozen Sachin ponds, French artillery relentlessly pounded towards them, breaking the ice and causing a chilling demise for the retreating forces. When the dust settled, victory belonged to Napoleon, but not without sacrifice. The French paid a toll of close to 9,000 casualties in killed and wounded, while the Allies suffered a staggering loss of almost 40,000. Napoleon, reveling in triumph, declared Austerlitz his finest moment, etching its place in the annals of military history. After Austerlitz, another treaty was signed, signaling the end of the Third Coalition. Yet, the impact was profound as Napoleon's peace deal dismantled the Holy Roman Empire, a loose confederation of German states that had stood since the year 800. Yet again, a millennium's existence erased by the strokes of Napoleon's pen. Austerlitz was the turning point and the point of no return in Napoleon's life. From Austerlitz onward, both in terms of real success for his armies and in the manifestation of a more cruel and despotic Napoleon, it was all downhill, as they say. After this moment, traditional French goals of natural borders transformed into Napoleon's personal quest for glory. By entrenching himself in his own myth and establishing the Confederation of the Rhine, Napoleon ensured that major European powers would eventually unite to depose him, creating an irresistible force. Post-Austerlitz, Napoleon's transformation was evident. A harsher figure, consumed by hubris or despotism. His example became a template for 20th century dictators. The new Napoleon tolerated no opposition, demanded unwavering loyalty, and his goals detached from reality. A stark instance was his response to a revolt in Hesse, Germany. Instead of a single execution as recommended by his generals, Napoleon ordered the town burnt with 30 executions. When the general protested, the number rose to 200. Such actions earned him enemies across the continent, foreshadowing the growth of his tyranny in Spain and beyond. In the years post-Austerlitz, the newly formed Confederation of the Rhine drew Prussia into conflict with France. The War of the Fourth Coalition emerged as Russia and Prussia united against Napoleon. Following his victory over the Prussians at the battles of Jena and Auerstedt in October 1806, and the subsequent destruction of about 30% of the Russian army at the Battle of Friedland, Napoleon secured triumph over the Fourth Coalition. In the Treaty of Tilsit, which imposed stringent conditions on Prussia, the seeds of anti-French sentiment were sowed within Prussia and Germany, setting the stage for events that would unfold during the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 and nearly a century later during World War I. By now, Napoleon was ensnared in a constant state of war, never satisfied, and increasingly tyrannical on his approach. When Portugal refused to enforce the newly implemented continental system that restricted trade with Britain for any nation under French control, Napoleon invaded and then deposed the Spanish king, appointing his brother Joseph as King of Spain. The Spanish ulcer, as it came to be known, would prove to be the soft underbelly of the French Empire. An unintended consequence of the French takeover of Spain was the sparking of Latin American independence movements, ceasing in the tumultuous situation in Spain. In the aftermath of the French incursion into Spain, known as the Peninsular War, a disastrous period unfolded, giving birth to the term guerrilla war. Spanish, Portuguese, and British forces, both regular and irregular, waged a relentless and brutal campaign against the French occupiers. Atrocities abounded on both sides, as each side tried to send a stronger message than the other. The challenging terrain and fierce resistance made it increasingly difficult for the French, requiring over 300,000 soldiers to attempt to maintain control, an endeavor marked by continual struggle and limited success. Later, Napoleon would come to regret the decision to intervene in Spain, calling it one of his great mistakes. From this point onward, navigating through two more coalitions formed against him, Napoleon's expanding vision of a French empire resembled a vortex, consuming everything in its path: soldiers, civilians, men, women, and children. The escalating cost of the wars took an ever greater toll on an exhausted continent. The beginning of the end unfolded on the steppes of Russia. The French launched the Russian campaign in 1812, pursuing the Russian army ever deeper into Russia, leading to the bloody Battle of Borodino. This brutal encounter, likely as the bloodiest day in Napoleon's war, witnessed over 80,000 men from both sides captured, wounded, or dead. By 1814, Napoleon faced defeat due to internal war weariness and the combined might of the Sixth Coalition. He was then exiled to Elba Island off the Italian coast in the Mediterranean. His ambition remained unsated. Almost a year later, in February 1815, he escaped Elba, landing in France with the determination to resume his reign. By March, he was back in Paris, ready to reignite his war against Europe. The age-defining and age-concluding Battle of Waterloo in June 1815 marked the final act of the Emperor and the First French Empire. After Waterloo, he faced his last exile to the desolate St. Helena Island in the middle of the Atlantic, under constant supervision from his British captors. Napoleon would finally die on May 5, 1821, at the age of 51. The official story is that he succumbed to stomach cancer, but a likely explanation is that he died from arsenic poisoning. It could have been accidental, but there is reason to believe he could have been slowly poisoned by one of his companions in St. Helena. At any rate, the emperor died alone and in pain, and far removed from the glories of his past, in the barren rock of St. Helena. Napoleon's legacy remains controversial, embodying two contrasting interpretations. In France, he is still revered as a national hero, credited with restoring pride, rewriting the rules of war, and laying the groundwork for the modern nation. His reforms and systems endure, allowing France to emerge from the chaos of revolution and rediscover its lost luster. Napoleon holds a lasting place in the pantheon of French heroes. However, the rest of Europe views him as a would-be conqueror, an unquenchable tyrant, seeking to subdue the continent under his rule. His relentless pursuit of personal glory, marked by bloodshed, left an indelible mark on European history, with speculation on how different it might have been without his overreach and miscalculations. For me, Napoleon remains a paradox, evoking both admiration and disdain. His relentless pursuit of power and world domination is undeniable, yet his influence is indelible and must be studied. While his faults and failures are apparent when broken down, the mythical aura surrounding Napoleon stems from his audacious attempt to transcend human limitations, coming remarkably close to success. As one historian put it, his magic lies in that his myth is greater than his reality. In the tapestry of French history, he stands alongside other strongmen like Charlemagne, Louis XIV, Clemenceau, Pétain, or de Gaulle. For friends, Napoleon lives on as a mythical embodiment of the nation and of glory. Once again, I want to thank you for listening. These past few weeks I've spent diving into the life of Napoleon have been personally very enriching, and I hope you were able to walk away with a better understanding of the men who defined an age. Don't forget to like and share our podcast, follow us on social media, on Twitter at Double Helix, and now on Instagram at history_helix. I plan to use it as my de facto website for now. Don't miss our visual companions there, providing a deeper insight into the episodes, and some much-needed visual aids. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Napoleon's era. It turned out to be a bit more biographical than we will typically do for our leadership season, but Napoleon's life was that eventful. As we bid farewell to the emperor, we turn our gaze back to a different chapter in French history. We have to go back some 690 years from today to the 1330s. Join us next time on Double Helix as we travel to the France of the 100 Years' War and unravel the inspiring tale of Joan of Arc, the Maid of Orleans, a courageous young woman who defied the odds to help secure victory for her people and inspire the Kingdom of France. Until then, stay curious and keep exploring history with us.